punishments for crimes are incredibly severe. Granted, the currency exchange rate and GDP is always...
I support that. Alright, time to pivot my content again. Geography now, Belarus.
It's time to learn geography
now! Ah, Belarus, the land where people will tell you, don't call me Russian, as they say that to you in Russian. But first, you know the drill, let's dissect the flag.
I have a lot to say, or I might have a lot to say. Let's see though.
The flag has two bands, one red taking up 2/3 of the height of the flag, and a green one in the lower third, and a white ruchnik pattern on the left hoist side. According to
yeah, this is the flag of Belarus. This is the flag of Belarus when it's a part of the Soviet Union, if I'm not mistaken. The actual flag is kind of red, white. It looks like the Russian flag, but the middle is red and the top are white, if I'm not mistaken.
Alexander Lukashenko, president since 1994, around the time that the flag was created. The red represents freedom and sacrifice of the nation's forefathers, the green represents life, and the ruchnik pattern has more of a cultural connotation rather than a symbolized one. Ruchnik patterns are used consistently in Belarusian cloths and woven material. Some ruchniks have hidden meanings, but the one on the flag doesn't really have one. But you know what is official? The borders of Belarus.
Oh.
And transition.
So it was just put there just to be put on there.
Now
Okay.
this is where things get fun, because in order to understand Belarus's boundaries, you kind of have to look close and find the few oddities that stick out. First of all, Belarus is located in Eastern Europe, landlocked between 5 other countries, Russia, Ukraine, and Poland, and Lithuania, and Latvia. The country is divided up into 6 regions. This one is called Brest. Brest. One special administrative district, Minsk, the capital city, and getting into Belarus is going to be relatively easy for all the neighbor nations. There are various roads and trains that travel to Belarus from places like Poland, Russia, and Lithuania. However, border guards have the jurisdiction to pretty much deny entry to anyone they deem as not worthy, and have no problem sending them back. Typically, if you're...
What in the world? Belarus is an interesting country to me. I find it as a very mysterious nation, to be quite frank. Also, the living quality there doesn't really seem to be like awful, really and truly.
Nationality is not from the Eastern European region, you may find it a little bit more difficult to enter, and this is one of the reasons why Belarus is one of the least visited countries in all of Europe. Long story short, if you aren't A, Eastern European, or B, you don't speak any Russian or Belarusian, or C, if you don't have a Russian or Belarusian friend to vouch for you, then getting in might have a little bit more of a complication, and it might cost you a lot in visa fees. However, Belarus loves visitors, you know, they're just suspicious of all you guys, that's all. The borders are strange because even though there are lots of rivers and lakes, not many of them define the borders of Belarus. I mean, sure, you have the short river borders like the Katra River in Lithuania and the Dnieper River in the south of Ukraine, but most of the borders are just arbitrarily drawn lines situated over land in which the trees and bushes are hacked to show the territory marks.
What? That is interesting.
Some of these borders get weird, like in the north, you have the oddities railway station split between Lithuania and Belarus, in which for about a mile, heading east you'll be in Belarus, and heading west you'll be in Lithuania. Also, you have an island split between Belarus and Lithuania in Lake Rychu, and 2 islands and 2 peninsulas in Lake Drukshie or Drisvati. Look, I'm trying my best to pronounce these Slavic and Baltic words, just bear with me.
Mike, yo, you are so right. Oh my gosh, dude. Jeez, dude, like... I'm trying to freaking practice Russian, bro, and woo, the main thing that is really, really holding me back is the fact that there's a bunch of words that their pronunciation is, oh my god.
And let's not even get started on how Lithuania was like, I'm just gonna take this Dieveniškių Istorinis National Park from you guys, even if it does give me like a 1-mile wide corridor to reach it. The weirdest part though would have to be the small Russian Sankovo-Medvyeshe enclave in the south near the border by Ukraine. This place used to, and technically kind of still does, belong to Russia, and under it is an old Russian military base. However, the entire place, including the base and 2 small towns near it, are virtually abandoned and empty. Why do you ask? Because of Chernobyl! Back in 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster actually affected Belarus more than it did Ukraine, and to this day, a huge portion of the south border by Ukraine is left completely abandoned due to the radioactive fallout that still lingers to this day. Due to the fact that there are no more operating checkpoints, this spot is notoriously known as the prominent place in all of Belarus where the few desperate and incredibly stupid people go to smuggle things in across the border.
Bro, Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah, smuggling things across the border and you're gonna get freaking some type of rare cancer in the future,
You
man.
know, at the risk of radiation poisoning. Hey man, I got that thing you wanted. It's actually kind of sad because on a vantage point, the area is really beautiful with lush forests and green pastures used for farm. Oh wait, before I talk about that, we have to show the transition. There we go, perfect. Like I was saying, Belarus's southland is actually very green and lush. A huge portion of this land prior to Chernobyl was used for farming and agriculture. However, today it's sadly kind of neglected by force. Thanks a lot, Ukraine. We could have used that land for like food and stuff. About 70% of the radiation from Chernobyl went to Belarus, and a fifth of Belarus's land was affected by the fallout. This is partially the reason why Belarus is a lot more urbanized today than it was prior to the 80s, since many of the people were displaced and evacuated from the region to avoid the danger. Today, however, with the help of the UN and other agencies, they are trying to combat the fallout problem by using cesium binders and rapeseed. I feel really uncomfortable saying that, but rapeseed.
Yo, that threw me off for a second. What did he say? I didn't even realize until he said
Seed cultivation, as the plant is known for absorbing the cesium-137 isotope. This is one of the few Western world backed up projects in Belarus, as they typically shy away from anything past Poland. Otherwise, the land of Belarus is generally flat. As a landlocked nation, they have no access to the sea. However, they do have more than enough water internally, with an abundance of rivers and lakes. About 40% of the land is forested. Some of them are captivatingly beautiful, like the Belarusskaya forest in the west by Poland, one of the few places where you can find the rare European bison, Belarus's favorite animal, which is even featured on the emblem, and a mascot for various hockey teams. The most common resource in Belarus is peat, which I just learned is some kind of decayed vegetation slab thing
What in
that can
the
be used for both
world?
fertilizer and fuel. I don't know, I'm not a pediatrician. Belarus is also located
I'm learning a lot here about Belarus. I know nothing about Belarus.
transitional zone between the continental climates and the maritime climates, so the weather is sometimes a little bit erratic. Summers typically range lower than room temperature, around 18 degrees Celsius or 65 degrees Fahrenheit, so you probably won't see any bikinis or Speedos, but you know who you will see? This is probably going to be the most interesting part of the video. The Belarusian people are what really make this enigmatic country stick out. First of all, Belarus has about 9.5 million people, about 84% of whom identify as ethnically Belarusian. The weird thing though is that even though over 80% of the people identify as ethnically Belarusian, only a fraction of these people actually speak the Belarusian language. That's right, Belarus has its own language. In fact, the Belarusian language...
Actually, the freaking Belarusian language is actually like harder than Russian. So I've heard actually, which is crazy.
which is kind of like a mixture between Polish and Russian and is about half derived from the Russian language. So if a Belarusian speaks Belarusian to a Russian, the Russian will be able to understand basically the overall gist of what the Belarusian is trying to say, but will still have some problems with the particularities. Even more confusing, many Belarusians actually speak in a Transyanka dialect, which is like a mixture of Belarusian and Russian. The president, Alexander Lukashenko, even speaks in a Transyanka accent sometimes. Speaking of Lukashenko, since independence from the former Soviet Union in the 90s, Belarus has only had one president since 1994, Alexander Lukashenko. And to understand Belarus, you kind of have to know who this guy is. Many people in Europe will tell you that Lukashenko is Europe's last real dictator. And I mean, when you have a guy who wins an election and makes laws that extend his terms and then the number of terms that he can serve.
I mean, Putin is also a dictator, but okay.
Yeah, the term dictator doesn't really seem too far-fetched of a title. Lukashenko is a strange but kind of funny leader in that, yes, he's kind of been accused of human rights violations, and yes, he's been accused of being slightly racist and slightly anti-Western, and he's always speaking in a brash, slightly aggressive...
Yeah. So much stuff of racism. I'm like, whatever. It doesn't even faze me.
aggressive tone that kind of makes him look angry. However, you can't deny the fact that he did kind of build up Belarus with a slightly better infrastructure than it was during the Soviet rule, and to this day, unemployment has dropped to nearly 1%.
Exactly. You know, a lot of people in the West, they have this stupid idea, probably from American propaganda, that they think that, oh, my West, oh, dictatorship equal bad. Dictatorship means that you can't have a good economy. Oh my gosh, no dictatorship, no. And you know, That's not always the case. Like you could have a dictatorship and you can have a very good economy, you can have a very good country, you could have a very good functioning system. Quite frankly speaking, in fact, I low-key kind of would support authoritarian countries, really and truly. And I actually explained this in one of my few other videos where I explained, like, yeah, you could say, oh, but if they repress the people and their human rights, I'm like, dude, trust me, most people can go above and beyond to replace said dictator. Because if anything bad happens, guess who's getting the blame? Him. And if things get really bad, most people aren't gonna, like, eventually they will get up and overthrow him. Plain and simple. But anyways, I'm just saying, authoritarian countries and countries that are dictatorship doesn't always mean bad. Doesn't always mean like, oh no. You know how many so-called democracies are just going absolutely nowhere? Absolutely nowhere. Literally. Freaking hell.
And they actually prosecute citizens who don't have jobs. And the cities are always clean, and the crime rate is incredibly low, making Belarus one of the safest places in Europe, and technically because punishments for crimes are incredibly severe. Granted, the currency exchange rate and GDP is always...
I support that. I support that. 100%. I think that if you make, like, severe crimes, like, severe punishments for crimes, yeah, that's the best way to reduce crime. Plain and straight. Although you're gonna have to get a really good justice system because you don't want innocent people getting caught up in that.
Low too, and jobs pay very minimal, and with a state-owned structure, company privatization is almost completely non-existent. But hey, that just means souvenirs are dirt cheap, right? Lukashenko has his opponents, and trust me, there have been a lot of anti-Lukashenko protests, but a lot of the people in Belarus can't deny, on the surface at least, that he's kind of a relatable person. I mean, as an athlete, he absolutely loves hockey and constantly plays it himself, even at exhibition games, sometimes with his own sons, which is why in 2014 he was delighted when Minsk hosted the Ice Hockey World Championships. Plus, I mean, look at that mustache. Just look at it! Nonetheless, Lukashenko has successfully gotten Belarus a bit of heat with the rest of the EU and the Western world due to the way how he runs the country, and to this day, relations are kind of non-existent or strained with them. Well, good luck, Belarus! You're off to a great diplomatic start.
At Papa John's, just
the friend zone.
When it comes to friends, I mean, yes, they have their affiliates, but it's a little complicated. First of all, Belarus's relationships are strange because they get along best with all 5 of their border neighbors. However, due to sanctions imposed upon them after allegations on Lukashenko, they are essentially closed off to the EU, which is weird because Poland and Lithuania and Latvia are in the EU. This makes things interesting because Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia are kind of seen as like conduit countries that act as a bridge between the EU and Belarus. Every so often, the EU will do experiments in which they will lift some of the sanctions to see if Belarus will engage. Typically, Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia get involved. Poland and Lithuania have been close friends since day one anyway, as Belarus has been part of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Polish-Lithuania Commonwealth for over 500 years. There's always been...
Yeah, that's what makes Belarus so different from the rest of the Rus people. You know, they're still Rus people, and they're basically, essentially... You know how you have, like, German people... You know, that have their own distinct nationality is the same logic. You know, same logic here. You know, there's still Rus people, just like, you know, Ukrainians, Russians, etc., etc. And there were other Rus states, too, that was eventually more or less taken over by Moscow. Quite frankly speaking, like Novgorod. That was also a Rus kingdom, really and truly. What really made them different is the fact that they weren't taken over by the Mongols. What kinda, and Russia doesn't like to admit this, but it was kinda the Mongols who shaped Russia. Even the Russian language today actually has a lot of Mongol influence in it. Something that Russia tries not to. Russia kind of just... I don't really like to show that period, its legacy from the Tartar yoke. But had Belarus been conquered by the Mongols, it probably would have more or less been somewhat the same as Russian today, mostly. I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know because Belarus is quite far from Moscow. So, I don't know. Maybe they would have. I don't know. Would they have turned into their own little thing? I mean, Belarus is quite a new country today. I never heard of any Rus principality that Belarus comes from. Ukrainians like to say that they came from Kiev Rus, which is debatable. You could argue that, yeah, and you could argue that they didn't. But Belarus is like, where in the world did they come from? I know they're Rus people, but where in the what Rus kingdom or principality would become Belarus? You know, with Russia, there's Moscow. With Ukraine, there's Kiev. Even though Ukraine means borderland or at the edge or whatever the heck Ukraine means, but Belarus simply just means like white Rus or white Russia or Western Rus, depending on what you believe. I don't know. This is why I say Belarus is such an interesting country. It's so mysterious.
In a sense, a Polish and Lithuanian influence in Belarus for the longest time. Afterwards, things switched up and Russia kind of took over in the 18th century, and that's when things really started to get Russified. Even the name Belarus means White Russia, and that's where the three sisters come in: Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus, commonly referred to as the Slavic sisters. These three countries understand.
I know this video was 9 years ago, but so sad to see the Slavic sisters in the situation that they're in.
Each other better than anyone else in the world. When it comes to Ukraine, Belarus actually, at some points, got along with them much better relationally than they did with Russia, and the Ukrainian language is actually closer to the Belarusian language than Russian, making exchanges much more easier for them. Where things got sour,
yeah, because Ukraine was also controlled by Poland, so...
though, was Crimea back in 2014. Russia invaded the Ukrainian-held region of Crimea, and amidst all the circumstances, Belarus actually kind of sided more with Russia than Ukraine, which made Ukraine kind of like, Belarus, how could you? So you would think Russia is best friends with Belarus, and they kind of are. I mean, on all levels of diplomacy and treaties, yes, it's kind of true. However, it's more like a love-hate relationship. For the longest time, Belarus was kind of seen as like Russia's little puppy. Everything started out great, and in the mid-90s, they signed treaties and friendship agreements and cooperation deals. They did huge business, and Lukashenko and Putin would ski together in the mountains. But then over time, Russia got a little, what Belarusians would describe as pushy. They accused Russia of trying to bribe them numerous times to assuage their national advocacies, like in the 2000s. They tried to get Belarus to recognize the South Ossetia and Abkhazia regions, and after the refusal, Russia banned all dairy products from Belarus, commonly referred to as the Milk War. And then there were the gas wars and the custom control threats. And to this day, Lukashenko and his legislators have even instituted a complete restructuring of the entire country's operations to become de-Russified. Textbooks.
Wow. Wow. Now this is... Wow, that is something. I mean, this is 9 years ago. Belarus does seem closer than ever to Russia now, but damn.
Educational material, broadcasting, TV, even street signs are now being switched over to become exclusively published in Belarusian and not Russian. Children are being taught Belarusian first and Russian second now, and this was done as A, a response to the tiring relations with Russia, and B, as an attempt to resurge the sense of nationalism in the population of Belarus.
Interesting.
After years of crazy messed up drama, Belarus is really starting to learn how to become Belarus again, one small diplomatically strained step at a time. Stay tuned, Belgium is coming up next.
Oh wow, that's actually interesting. Belarus got me very interested. I am quite interested in Eastern Slavic countries, more so specifically Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. They all both seem like very interesting countries with very interesting origins, quite frankly speaking. Personally speaking, very interested in their culture, history, and whatnot. It seemed very similar. But yeah, that was very insightful. Another wonderful reaction. Look, man, you made it all the way to the end of this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. You have any suggestions, go comment down below. It's quite sad to see because most of my Russian viewers I used to have quite a large Russian viewer base, but yeah, Russia banned YouTube and I lost 99% of them. So that's quite sad to see. I wonder what they would have said about this. I guess I'll never know. Anyways, thank you for watching and goodbye. And make sure you like the video too.